Good night. Good night, good night, good night. It's wonderful to be here. You know, let me say to the wonderful people here in Bakaivi, the people of St. Michael East, the Barbados Labour Party family, and to all of Barbados, that this constituency is where I am from. And it is perhaps very fitting that I begin on this first platform for me tonight, right here. Trevor Prescott and I always talk about the way that we grew up. I always tell people, and people will rarely hear me, even though I'm proud of that school as well, but people will rarely hear me talk about the secondary school that I went to, even though, like many schools, it is a good school. But people will always hear me talk about the fact that I went to Belmont Primary. And people will always hear me talk about how much that experience and my friendships with the people in this constituency have shaped my life. I know that that is also true for Trevor Prescott. And he and I have a lot in common. He is a man that I believe, as your Barbados Labour Party representative of many years and your candidate in this 2026 election, believes in justice. Believes that the way that people live every day matters. And it is important for us as members of Parliament, as representatives of people, to bring to bear that experience on the work that we do in Parliament every day. Trevor is a man who will always, whether we are talking about legislation or policy or any matter, will always talk about how he feels it will affect the people in St. Michael East. I always talk about how I feel it will affect the people in St. Michael South Central. Because, you know, I said to some young people today, and I don't mind saying it because you heard the Prime Minister say last night that we have to have some frank conversations. It is time for us to get honest about our governance and our representation and what should you expect from us? And equally, what do we expect from you? Because this is a relationship. And I, like Trevor, believe that the work we are doing here in political service is about relationships. And so the conversations that we have to have are perhaps not the easiest conversations, but I think that 2026 and this election are the times that we have to have them. Our chairman tonight made reference to the fact that I began this journey as Minister in Economic Affairs and Investment. And when we talked about what we needed to do for this economy, yes, we had to get the foreign reserves under control. And I remember very well the evening, all of my colleagues, after the swearing in, they got to go home and change. But Ryan Strawn and I and the rest of the Prime Minister's economic team, together with her, had to go and settle some difficult questions. And the macroeconomic issues always matter. You heard the Prime Minister last night at Oystons talk about the fact that the debt was now under 98%, having come down from 176% debt to GDP, including our arrears. And why does that matter? Because at that time, 68 cents out of every dollar was paying back debt. And it meant you had no money to spend on the things that matter to the people of St. Michael South Central and St. Michael East. So we had to work on things like debt, and we had to work on things like foreign reserves. But let me tell you a little bit about what else I had to work on. Sometimes we call the word climate, and people think that it is a make-up thing. And sometimes perhaps we don't use it properly. Sometimes perhaps we say it too flippantly. That's climate and this is climate. But the fact is that a lot of the issues that affect us have been a part of our conversations on the climate crisis, and I'll tell you exactly what I mean. We know that in communities like these, there are issues of land ownership, land tenure, and how that relates to water and sanitation. And this constituency, perhaps more than any other, has experienced that. The fact that we have communities where people have made their homes and then also have to be able to benefit from proper access to water and sanitation. And I'll tell you that Trevor Prescott has been the key champion for that to be addressed. And so when you heard us talk last night about new work that is going on with respect to sewage plants around the country and how we're going to address, for all Barbadians, questions of sanitation, that was one of the issues that Trevor Prescott championed, yes, and that I also had the privilege to work on when I was Minister for Economic Affairs and Investment. These efforts to have people live with dignity, these are the kinds of things that the Barbados Labour Party is committed to. The issue of how many times members of the cabinet or the prime minister has to go and have conversations with people about how we are going to pay for these things like the South Coast sewage plant or in Bridgetown or right here in St. Michaelis to give people a new deal so that they live better on the land that they live on. When you hear a leader of the opposition get up every week in Parliament and start counting members on which side are present, it says to me that he does not understand governance. He does not understand that you cannot sit down home and get things. My sister, Gail, may she rest in peace, always used to say, if you don't leave home, you don't get nothing. And so a man who was leader of the opposition will suggest that members of parliament who are also ministers of government who are responsible for running a country. He is a man that thinks that governance is getting up and making big speeches in parliament and threatening to starve people. That is not governance. And if there's one message, and I'll tell you, Barbados Labour Party family, if there's one message that when you get out on those streets tomorrow and Friday and Saturday and Sunday and every day that you walk up and down St. Michaelis to talk about why Trevor Prescott must be returned as a member of parliament for this constituency, the thing to say to people or the thing to ask people is, can you imagine a Barbados that is run by the likes of Ralph Thorne? And if you know anything about me, you know that this is not the kind of conversation that I normally have. It's not. I don't usually come on a platform to speak about one individual, but I think that this is a critical time. And I think that Barbadians, we have to realize what is at stake here. And I'll tell you something about the level of risk represented by the leadership of Ralph Thorne. I'll tell you a little story. I don't normally go down this road, but it is important for people to understand the character of a person. You know, Ralph and I fell out some years ago. And he stopped speaking to me for about 2 years. And let me tell you why. We were having a conversation. This is before the 2018 election. We were having a conversation as a team about how we are operating and moving around in our constituencies. I come to talk to you tonight, St. Michaelis. And in that conversation, he said, I want to understand, especially from the St. Michael MPs, how is it that you deal with these men in the street and these men on the block that think that they are so entitled to things? How these men with all of this ego and they think that they're so special and so important? And I got to tell you, I did not take kindly to the characterization. I said to him, but Ralph, those men are the same men as you. That man that you are talking about that you think has no right to dignity or pride or even ego is the same man as you. It's the same ego that you have. He's the same human as you. And just like you are flawed and puffed up, he might be too. But I'll tell you what that incident showed me. And if I have to confess, my reaction came because I felt like it was a rejection of where I came from. I felt like it was a rejection of St. Michael East and St. Michael South Central and St. Michael South. I felt like it was a rejection by the man of how people live every day in this country. And I thought that was not right. But I go further. Because having had to come head to head with him to say, I put it to you that those people are entitled to as much dignity as you are. Having had to say that, the man took such great offense that he would not speak to me for 2 years. And Dwight Sutherland will come on this platform tonight. And he was there when we all had to take a photo together. And I begged Dwight to come on the other side of me because me and another member's colors were not coming together right for the photo. And it would have meant that Ralph had to move to stand next to me and he wouldn't move. And he wouldn't move. And I don't say these things because I come just to tell stories, but that is the pettiness of the man. And you see it every day in Parliament. This thing is not a joke. Running a small island in 2026, when smallness is under attack, when sovereignty is under attack all over the world, is not for people who have come to make sport and to puff up their chests and to look down on people that live regular lives like you and like me. Leadership cannot be puffed up and it cannot be petty. And we have to decide what kind of leadership we want in this country. It is no secret that the Prime Minister and I do not always agree on matters of policy. I don't think it ever happens in any cabinet. Neither does she always agree with Trevor. Neither does she always agree with Kirk. But I want you to listen to me good. You listening? There has never been a moment in the 10 years since I started my political service with this Barbados Labour Party that I was not moved in my spirit to the conviction that Mia Amor Motley is the only choice for leadership in Barbados at this critical time in the world's politics. There has never been a moment that I have doubted that. 2018 was an economic crisis. And we've talked a lot about the debt and the foreign reserves and the things we had to do. 2022 was in the heart of a pandemic, a 1-in-100-year event. And there was a leadership that was needed for that. We told you that it was safer with Mia and it was safer with the BLP in the context of a pandemic. 2026 is not normal. It is not normal. And I want you to look around in this very hemisphere. Don't look too far. To see what pettiness in leadership does. You don't have to look too far to see when people who come to leadership who are about retribution and getting back at people for perceived wrongs, what that does to countries, what that does to people's sense of security. It destroys nations. It takes lives. And we are seeing it now. But far from pettiness, I would say that Mia Motley as a leader reaches across the aisle at times and in ways that sometimes even we don't understand. I will always say that in my time on this earth, in this country, I have never seen a government be as consultative and inclusive as this Barbados Labour Party has been to get all ideas around the table to contend. We have a choice to make, Barbados. And forgive me if I didn't come here with a lot of hype. I came here to have a conversation in the community that I have been a part of for all my life. The notion that we all love Mia and Mia is going to win and Mia going to get back in and I ain't going to vote for this BLP candidate or that BLP candidate. I want you all, this is the second time I'm asking you to hear me good. Want to listen? We may think that we can, with our one vote, orchestrate a complex national outcome in these elections. I'll tell you what I mean. We may have these ideas of giving them a seat here or giving them a seat here because of this notion that the country needs an opposition. Careful. Careful, because there are times that people have voted for an opposition and they got a government. The only thing that is required in this election is to ensure that you vote for strong leadership in your constituency and for strong leadership in this country. That is what is required. The idea that, man, she can get back in, so I ain't gonna worry, I can stop home. No. This is not the time to be complacent. This is not the time to say, whatever happened, I still gotta live. Yes, we all still gotta live. But it matters who is in charge. And never before have I been more concerned about what is over there on the other side, and I'll tell you why. This is a person that has no idea what it takes to govern a country. No idea that sometimes you have to reach out your hand and take the hand of the other person, not to sit back and say, I am not coming to have a conversation with you on education reform because I'm eating my food. The irony. A man who could not talk policy because he was eating his food and then had to talk for 3 and 4 hours in Parliament to starve out people. Leadership is not petty. And I know that the good people of St. Michael East understand that. I know that the good people of St. Michael East and the people of the Barbados Labour Party understand that this is not the time to remove ourselves from the work that has been going on in these communities and the work that has been going on in this country. It is important tonight, Barbados Labour Party and Barbados, that we keep the pressure on when it comes to ensuring our safety in this country. The kinds of conversations that we have to have, the kinds of foreign policy discussions, the issues of security in this little Caribbean. This is not for the inexperienced. And it is not for the weak. And it's not for people who are led by ego and who just want to get back at people because they may not have been chosen for Attorney General or whatever it was they had their eye on. I will tell you that this is a Barbados Labour Party government and team that understand that we all have a role to play. And sometimes we will be on the pitch, and sometimes we will be on the bench, and sometimes we will be working around the clock in government, and sometimes we'll be working around the clock in the constituency. We all have our role to play. And ladies and gentlemen, tonight I want to remind you of the role that you have to play. You have to get out and vote on the 11th of February. You have to get out on the 11th of February and vote for Trevor Prescott in St. Michael East. And vote for Dwight Sutherland in St. George South. And vote for Kurt Humphrey in St. Michael South. And vote for Sandia Bradshaw in St. Michael South East. And vote for Marsha Caddle in St. Michael South Central. You have to be able to mobilize and remind people what is at stake and what we stand to lose. There is too much to sacrifice that we have been able to do since 2018, and we have done it together. We have done it with you. So don't let go of the work that you have done. Keep fighting. Keep talking to your friends. Make sure that everybody gets out there and understands what is at stake. And vote, vote, vote for Trevor Prescott. Vote for the Barbados Labour Party. Ladies and gentlemen, God bless you.